The Story of Ahikar. We have in the Story of Ahikar one of the most ancient sources of human thought and wisdom. Its influence can be traced through the legends of many peoples, including the Quran and the Old and New Testaments. A mosaic found in Treves, Germany, pictured among the wise men of the world the character of Ahikar. Here is his colorful tale. The date of this story was long debated until the original text was discovered in an Aramaic papyrus from 500 BC. Among the ruins of Elephantine, the story is fiction rather than history, and a version of it appears in the supplementary pages of the Arabian Nights. It is brilliantly written, full of action, intrigue, and narrow escape, holding the attention to the end. The liberty of imagination is the writer's most precious possession. The writing divides itself into 4 parts. 1. The narrative. 2. The teaching, a remarkable series of proverbs. 3. The journey to Egypt. 4. The similitudes or parables, with which Ahikar completes the education of his erring nephew. The story of Ahikar, the wise, vizier of Sennacherib the king, and of Nadon, sister-son to Ahikar. There was a vizier in the days of King Sennacherib, son of Sarhadam, king of Assyria and Nineveh, a wise man named Ahikar. He was vizier to King Sennacherib. He had a fine fortune and much goods. He was skillful, wise, a philosopher, learned in knowledge, opinion, and government. He had married 60 women and had built a castle for each of them. Yet with all this, he had no child by any of them who might be his heir. He was very sad because of this. One day he assembled the astrologers, the learned men, and the wizards, and explained to them his condition and the matter of his barrenness. They said to him, "Go, sacrifice to the gods and beseech them, that perchance they may provide thee with a boy." He did as they told him, offering sacrifices to the idols, beseeching them with entreaty. But they answered him not a word. He went away sorrowful and dejected, with pain in his heart. Then he returned and implored the Most High God, believing and beseeching him with a burning heart, saying, "O Most High God, creator of the heavens and the earth, creator of all created things, I beseech thee to give me a boy, that I may be consoled by him, that he may be present at my death, that he may close my eyes, and that he may bury me." Then a voice came to him, saying, "Inasmuch as thou hast relied first on graven images and hast offered sacrifices to them, for this reason thou shalt remain childless all thy life. But take Nadon, thy sister's son, and make him thy child, teach him thy learning and thy good breeding, and at thy death he shall bury thee." So he took Nadon, his sister's son, who was a little suckling, and handed him over to 8 wet nurses to bring him up. They raised him with good food, gentle training, silken clothing, purple and crimson. He was seated upon couches of silk. When Nadon grew and walked, shooting up like a tall cedar, Ahikar taught him good manners, writing, science, and philosophy. After many days, King Sennacherib looked at Ahikar and saw that he had grown very old. He said to him, "O my honored friend, skillful, trusty, wise, governor, secretary, vizier, chancellor, and director, thou art grown very old, and weighted with years, and thy departure from this world must be near. Tell me, who shall have a place in my service after thee?" Ahikar said, "O my lord, may thy head live forever. There is Nadon, my sister's son. I have made him my child, and I have brought him up, and taught him my wisdom and my knowledge." The king said, "Bring him to my presence, that I may see him. If I find him suitable, he shall stand in thy place, and thou shalt go thy way to rest and live the remainder of thy life in sweet repose." Ahikar brought Nadon before the king. Nadon did homage and wished him power and honor. The king looked at him, admired him, rejoiced in him, and said, "Is this thy son, O Ahikar? I pray that God may preserve him. As thou hast served me and my father Sarhadam, so may this boy serve me and fulfill my undertakings, my needs and my business, that I may honor him and make him powerful for thy sake." Ahikar bowed and said, "May thy head live forever, O my lord the king. I ask that thou be patient with my boy Nadon and forgive his mistakes, that he may serve thee as is fitting." The king swore that he would make Nadon the greatest of his favorites and the most powerful of his friends, and that he should be with him in honor and respect. He kissed Ahikar's hands and bade him farewell. Ahikar took Nadon and seated him in a chamber, teaching him night and day until he had filled him with wisdom and knowledge more than with bread and water. The teachings of Ahikar, the proverbs, cleaned and narration ready. Thus he taught him, saying, "O my son, hear my speech, and follow my advice, and remember what I say. If thou hearest a word, let it die in thy heart, and reveal it not to another, lest it become a live coal and burn in thy tongue, causing pain in thy body, and bringing reproach and shame before God and man. If thou hast heard a report, spread it not, and if thou hast seen something, tell it not. Make thy eloquence easy to the listener, and be not hasty to return an answer. When thou hast heard anything, hide it not. Loose not a sealed knot, nor seal a loosened knot. Covet not outward beauty, for it wanes and passes away, but an honorable remembrance lasts forever. Let not a foolish woman deceive thee with her speech, lest thou die the most miserable of deaths, and she entangle thee in the net until thou art ensnared. Desire not a woman adorned with dress and ointments, who is despicable and silly in her soul. Woe to thee if thou bestow on her anything that is thine, or commit to her what is in thy hand, and she entice thee into sin, and God be wroth with thee. Be not like the almond tree, which brings forth leaves before all the trees and edible fruit after them all, but be like the mulberry tree, which brings forth edible fruit before all the trees and leaves after them all. Bend thy head low, soften thy voice, be courteous, walk in the straight path, and be not foolish. Raise not thy voice when thou laughest, for if a house were built by loud voices, the ass would build many houses every day. And if strength alone drove the plow would never be removed from the shoulders of the camels. The removing of stones with a wise man is better than the drinking of wine with a sorry man. Pour out thy wine on the tombs of the just, and drink not with ignorant and contemptible people. Cleave to wise men who fear God, and be like them. Go not near the ignorant, lest thou become like him, and learn his ways. When thou hast gotten thee a comrade or a friend, try him first, and afterwards make him thy friend. Praise him not without a trial, and spoil not thy speech with a man who lacks wisdom. While a shoe is on thy foot, walk with it on the thorns, and make a road for thy son and thy household. Make thy ship taut before she goes upon the sea, and its waves and sinks, and cannot be saved. If the rich man eat a snake, they say, it is by his wisdom. If a poor man eat it, they say, it is from his hunger. Be content with thy daily bread and thy goods, and covet not what is in others. Be not neighbor to the fool. Eat not bread with him, and rejoice not in the calamities of thy neighbors. If thine enemy wrong thee, show him kindness. A man who fears God, do thou fear him and honor him. The ignorant man falls and stumbles, but the wise man, even if he stumbles, is not shaken. Even if he falls, he rises quickly, and if he's sick, he can take care of his life. But for the ignorant and stupid man, there is no drug for his disease. If a man approach thee who is inferior to thyself, go forward to meet him, and remain standing. If he cannot recompense thee, his Lord will recompense thee for him. Spare not to discipline thy son, for the correction of thy son is like manure to the garden, like tying the mouth of a purse, like tethering beasts, and like bolting the door. Restrain thy son from wickedness, and teach him manners before he rebels against thee, and brings thee into contempt among the people. And thou hang thy head in the streets and assemblies, and art punished for the evil of his deeds. Get thee a fat ox with a foreskin, and an ass great with its hoofs. Get not an ox with large horns, nor make friends with a tricky man, nor get a quarrelsome slave, nor a thievish handmaid, for everything thou committest to them they will ruin. Let not thy parents curse thee, and let the Lord be pleased with them. For it is said, he who despiseth his father or his mother, let him die the death of sin, and he who honoreth his parents shall prolong his days and see all that is good. Walk not on the road without weapons, for thou knowest not when the foe may meet thee. Be not like a bare, leafless tree that does not grow, but be like a tree covered with leaves and boughs. For the man who has neither wife nor children is disgraced in the world and hated by them. Like a leafless and fruitless tree, be like a fruitful tree on the roadside, whose fruit is eaten by all who pass by, and under whose shade the beasts of the desert rest. Every sheep that wanders from its path and its companions becomes food for the wolf. Say not, my Lord is a fool, and I am wise, and relate not the speech of ignorance and folly, lest thou be despised. Be not one of those servants to whom their lords say, get away from us, but be one of those to whom they say, approach, and come near. Caress not thy slave in the presence of his companion, for thou knowest not which of them shall be of most value to thee in the end. Be not afraid of thy Lord who created thee, lest he be silent to thee. Make thy speech fair and sweeten thy tongue. Permit not thy companion to tread on thy foot, lest he tread another time on thy breast. If thou beat a wise man with a word of wisdom, it will lurk in his breast like a subtle sense of shame. But if thou beat the ignorant with a stick, he will neither understand nor hear. If thou send a wise man for thy needs, give him not many orders, for he will do thy business as thou desirest. If thou send a fool, give him no orders, but go thyself and do thy business. For if thou order him, he will not do what thou desirest. And if they send thee on business, hasten to fulfill it quickly. Make not an enemy of a man stronger than thyself, for he will take thy measure in his revenge on thee. Make trial of thy son and thy servant before thou committest thy belongings to them, lest they make away with them. For he who hath a full hand is called wise, even if he be stupid, and he who hath an empty hand is called poor and ignorant, even if he be the prince of sages. I have eaten colocynth and swallowed aloes, and I have found nothing more bitter than poverty and scarcity. Teach thy son frugality and hunger, that he may do well in the management of his household. Teach not to the ignorant the language of wise men, for it will be burdensome to him. Display not thy condition to thy friend, lest thou be despised by him. The blindness of the heart is more grievous than the blindness of the eyes. For the blindness of the eyes may be guided little by little, but the blindness of the heart is not guided, and leaves the straight path for a crooked way. The stumbling of a man with his foot is better than the stumbling of a man with his tongue. A friend who is near is better than a more excellent brother who is far away. Beauty fades, but learning lasts. The world wanes and becomes vain, but a good name neither wanes nor becomes vain. The man who hath no rest, his death is better than his life. The sound of weeping is better than the sound of singing, for sorrow and weeping, if the fear of God be in them, are better than rejoicing. The thigh of a frog in the hand is better than a goose in thy neighbor's pot. A sheep near thee is better than an ox far away. A sparrow in thy hand is better than 1,000 flying. Poverty that gathers is better than the scattering of much provision. A living fox is better than a dead lion. A pound of wool is better than a pound of gold or silver, for gold and silver are hidden in the earth, but wool is seen in the markets and is a beauty to him who wears it. A small fortune is better than a scattered fortune. A living dog is better than a dead poor man. A poor man who does right is better than a rich man dead in sins. Keep a word in thy heart, and it shall be much to thee. Beware lest thou reveal the secret of thy friend. Let not a word issue from thy mouth until thou hast taken counsel with thy heart. Stand not between persons quarreling, for from a bad word comes a quarrel, and from a quarrel comes war, and from war comes fighting, and thou wilt be forced to bear witness. Flee from such things and rest thyself. Withstand not a man stronger than thyself, but get thee a patient spirit, endurance, and upright conduct, for nothing is more excellent than these. Hate not thy first friend, for the second may not last. Visit the poor in his affliction. Speak of him in the presence of the ruler, and do thy diligence to save him from the mouth of the lion. Rejoice not in the death of thine enemy, for after a little while thou shalt be his neighbor. Him who mocks thee, honor and respect, and be beforehand with him in greeting. If water would stand still in heaven, and a black crow become white, and myrrh grow sweet as honey, then might ignorant men and fools understand and become wise. If thou desire to be wise, restrain thy tongue from lying, thy hand from stealing, and thine eyes from beholding evil, then shalt thou be called wise. Let the wise man beat thee with a rod, but let not the fool anoint thee with sweet salve. Be humble in thy youth, and thou shalt be honored in thine old age. Withstand not a man in the days of his power, nor a river in the days of its flood. Be not hasty in the wedding of a wife, for if it turns out well, she will say, My Lord, make provision for me. And if it turns out ill, she will reproach him who was the cause of it. Whosoever is elegant in his dress is the same in his speech, and he who has a mean appearance in his dress is the same in his speech. If thou hast committed a theft, make it known to the ruler and give him a share of it, that thou mayest be delivered from him. Otherwise thou wilt endure bitterness. Make a friend of the man whose hand is satisfied and filled. Make no friend of the man whose hand is closed and hungry. There are 4 things in which neither the king nor his army can be secure: oppression by the vizier, bad government, perversion of the will, and tyranny over the subject. And 4 things which cannot be hidden: the prudent, the foolish, the rich, and the poor. The betrayal of Nadan and the fall of Ahikar, cleaned and narration ready. Thus spoke Ahikar. And when he had finished these injunctions and proverbs to Nadan, his sister's son, he imagined that Nadan would keep them all. He did not know that instead of wisdom, he had awakened in him weariness, contempt, and mockery. Ahikar then sat quietly in his house and delivered over to Nadan all his goods, his slaves, his handmaidens, his horses, his cattle, and everything he had possessed and gained. The power of bidding and forbidding remained in Nadan's hand. Ahikar rested in his house, going only from time to time to pay his respects to the king before returning home. But when Nadan perceived that authority was now in his own hand, he despised Ahikar's position and scoffed at him. He blamed him whenever he appeared, saying, My uncle Ahikar is in his dotage, he knows nothing now. He began to beat the slaves and handmaidens, to sell the horses and camels, and to squander all that Ahikar had owned. When Ahikar saw that Nadan had no compassion on his servants or his household, he arose and drove him from his house. He sent word to the king that Nadan had scattered his possessions and wasted his provision. The king called Nadan and said, While Ahikar remains in health, no one shall rule over his goods, his household, or his possessions. And the hand of Nadan was lifted off from Ahikar and all his goods. In shame, Nadan no longer entered or left his uncle's house, nor did he greet him. Ahikar repented of all the toil he had spent on Nadan, and was very sorrowful. Nadan had a younger brother named Benuzardan, and Ahikar took him in place of Nadan, bringing him up and honoring him greatly. He delivered to him all that he possessed, and made him governor of his house. When Nadan saw this, he was seized with envy and jealousy. He complained to everyone who would listen, mocking his uncle and saying, My uncle has chased me from his house and preferred my brother to me. But if the Most High God gives me power, I shall bring upon him the misfortune of death. And Nadan continued to meditate on what stumbling block he might contrive for him. After a time, Nadan devised a plot. He wrote a letter to Achish, son of Shah the Wise, king of Persia, saying, Peace, health, might, and honor from Sennacherib, king of Assyria and Nineveh, and from his vizier and secretary Ahikar unto thee, O great king. Let there be peace between thee and me. When this letter reaches thee, arise quickly and go to the plain of Nizrin, to Assyria and Nineveh, and I will deliver the kingdom to thee without war or battle. He also wrote another letter in the name of Ahikar to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, let there be peace between thee and me, O mighty king. When this letter reaches thee, arise and go to Assyria and Nineveh, to the plain of Nisrin, and I will deliver the kingdom to thee without war or fighting. The writing of Nadan was like the writing of Ahikar. He folded the letters and sealed them with Hikar's seal. They were placed in the king's palace. Then Nadan wrote a third letter, this time from the king to Ahikar. Peace and health to my vizier, my secretary, my chancellor Ahikar. When this letter reaches thee, assemble all the soldiers with thee. Let them be perfect in clothing and number, and bring them to me on the 5th day in the plain of Nisrin. When thou seest me coming toward thee, make the army move against me as an enemy, that the ambassadors of Pharaoh may see our strength and fear us, for they are our enemies. He sealed the letter and sent it to Ahikar by one of the king's servants. Then he took the forged letters and read them before the king, showing him the seal. When the king heard the contents, he was perplexed and filled with fierce wrath. What have I done to Ahikar, he said, that he should write these letters to my enemies? Is this my recompense for all my benefits to him? Nadan said, Be not grieved, O king, no wrath. Let us go to the plain of Nisrin and see if the tale be true. On the 5th day, Nadan took the king, the soldiers, and the vizier, and they went to the desert plain. The king looked, and behold, Ahikar and the army were set in array. When Ahikar saw the king, he signaled the army to move as in war, and to fight in array against the king, as the letter had commanded, not knowing the pit Nadan had dug for him. When the king saw this, he was seized with terror and wrath. Nadan said, Hast thou seen, O king, what this wretch has done? But be not wroth. Return to thy throne, and I will bring Ahikar to thee bound and chained. The king returned to his throne, provoked and silent. Nadan went to Ahikar and said, By God, O my uncle, the king rejoices in thee, and thanks thee for doing what he commanded. He has sent me to tell thee to dismiss the soldiers and come to him with thy hands bound behind thee and thy feet chained, that the ambassadors of Pharaoh may see this and fear the king. Ahikar said, To hear is to obey. He bound his hands and chained his feet. Nadan took him to the king. Ahikar bowed to the ground and wished the king power and perpetual life. The king said, O Ahikar, my secretary, governor of my affairs, ruler of my state, what evil have I done to thee that thou hast rewarded me with this deed? They showed him the forged letters. When Ahikar saw them, his limbs trembled, his tongue was tied, and he could not speak. He hung his head toward the earth. The king believed the letters and commanded that Ahikar be killed. His neck struck with the sword outside the city. Nadan cried out, O Ahikar, O blackface, what avails thee thy meditation or thy power now? The swordsman was named Abu Samik. The king said, Go, cleave the neck of Ahikar at the door of his house and cast his head 100 cubits away. Ahikar knelt and said, Let the king live forever. If thou desire to slay me, let thy wish be fulfilled. I know I am not guilty, but the wicked must give account of his wickedness. Yet, I beg thee, let the swordsman give my body to my slaves that they may bury me. The king granted this. They took Ahikar naked to slay him. Knowing he would die, he sent word to his wife, Come out and meet me with 1,000 young virgins, dressed in purple and silk, that they may weep for me. Prepare a table for the swordsman and his servants, and mix plenty of wine. She did all he commanded, for she was wise and prudent. When the king's men arrived, they found the table set and the wine abundant. They ate and drank until they were drunken. Ahikar took the swordsman aside and said, Do you not remember when Sahadam, the king's father, sought to kill thee? I hid thee until his anger passed, and he rejoiced when I brought thee before him. Remember the kindness I did thee. The king will repent concerning me, for I am not guilty. Nadan has deceived me. Hide me in a cellar in my garden. I have a slave in prison who deserves death. Dress him in my clothes, and let the drunken servants kill him, thinking it is me. Cast his head far from his body, and give the body to my slaves to bury. You will have laid up a treasure with me. The swordsman did as Ahikar commanded. Ahikar's wife brought him food secretly each week. The story spread everywhere that Ahikar the sage had been slain, and all the people mourned for him, saying, Alas for thee, O Ahikar, for thy learning and courtesy. Where can another like thee be found? The king repented, but too late. He told Nadan to make mourning for his uncle. But Nadan, foolish and hard-hearted, did not weep. He gathered dissolute people and feasted. He seized Ahikar's servants, tortured them, and beat them. He did not respect Ahikar's wife, who had raised him like her own son, but sought to lead her into sin. Ahikar, hidden in the cellar, heard the weeping of his slaves and neighbors. He praised the Most High God and prayed continually. The swordsman visited him from time to time and comforted him. When the story spread to other lands that Ahikar had been slain, all the kings were grieved and despised Sennacherib, lamenting the death of Ahikar the solver of riddles, the riddles of Egypt, and the return of Ahikar, cleaned and narration ready. When the king of Egypt was certain that Ahikar had been slain, he arose and wrote a letter to King Sennacherib, saying, Peace, health, might, and honor to thee, my beloved brother, King Sennacherib. I desire to build a castle between the heaven and the earth, and I want thee to send me, a wise and clever man to build it for me, and to answer all my questions. If thou wilt do this, I will grant thee the taxes and customs of Assyria for 3 years. He sealed the letter and sent it to Sennacherib. The king read it and gave it to his viziers and nobles. They were perplexed and ashamed, and he was filled with great wrath, not knowing what to do. He assembled the old men, the learned men, the wise men, the philosophers, the diviners, and the astrologers, and read the letter to them, saying, Who among you will go to Pharaoh and answer his questions? They said, O king, there is none in thy kingdom who knows these matters except Ahikar, thy vizier and secretary. But since he's gone, perhaps Nadan, his sister's son, may know something, for Ahikar taught him all his wisdom. The king called Nadan and said, Look at this letter and understand it. When Nadan read it, he said, O my lord, who is able to build a castle between heaven and earth? When the king heard this, he sorrowed with a great sorrow. He stepped down from his throne, sat in ashes, and began to weep and wail over Ahikar. O my grief, O Ahikar, who knew the secrets and the riddles. Woe is me for thee, teacher of my country, ruler of my kingdom. Where shall I find thy like? How did I destroy thee? I listened to the talk of a stupid, ignorant boy without knowledge or manliness. Who will give thee back to me even once? I would give half my kingdom to see thee again. O Ahikar, how have I killed thee? I did not wait to see the end of the matter. The king wept night and day. When the swordsman saw the king's sorrow, his heart softened. He approached and said, O my lord, command thy servants to cut off my head. The king said, Woe to thee, Abu Samik, what is thy fault? The swordsman said, Every slave who acts contrary to his master's word is killed. I have acted contrary to thy command. The king said, In what hast thou acted contrary? The swordsman said, Thou didst command me to kill Ahikar, but I knew thou wouldst repent and that he had been wronged. I hid him in a certain place and killed one of his slaves instead. Ahikar is alive in a cistern. If thou command, I will bring him. The king said, Woe to thee, Abu Samik, thou hast mocked me. But the swordsman said, By thy life, O king, Ahikar is alive. When the king heard this, he fainted from joy. He commanded them to bring Ahikar. He said to the swordsman, If thy speech is true, I will enrich thee and exalt thee above all thy friends. The swordsman went rejoicing to Ahaikar's house. He opened the hiding place and found Ahikar sitting, praising God. He cried, O Ahikar, I bring thee joy and delight. He told him all that happened and took him to the king. When the king saw Ahikar, he saw that he was in want, his hair long like a wild beast's, his nails like eagle's claws, his body dusty, and his face pale like ashes. The king sorrowed over him, rose at once, embraced him, kissed him, and wept, saying, Praise be to God, who has brought thee back to me. He comforted him, stripped off his own robe, and put it on the swordsman, giving him great wealth. He made Ahikar rest. Ahikar said, Let the king live forever. These are the deeds of the children of the world. I reared a palm tree to lean upon, and it bent sideways and threw me down. But since I have appeared before thee, let not care oppress thee. The king said, Blessed be God, who showed thee mercy, knew thou wast wronged, and saved thee. Go to the warm bath, shave thy head, cut thy nails, change thy clothes, and refresh thyself for 40 days, that thy strength and color may return. The king stripped off his costly robe and put it on Ahikar. Ahikar thanked God, bowed to the king, and returned to his dwelling glad and happy, praising the Most High. His household rejoiced with him, and all who heard he was alive rejoiced also. The letter of riddles and the journey to Egypt, cleaned and narration ready, Ahikar did as the king commanded and rested for 40 days. Then he dressed himself in his finest garments and rode to the king, with his slaves before him and behind him, rejoicing and delighted. When Nadan, his sister's son, saw this, fear and terror seized him, and he was perplexed, not knowing what to do. Ahikar entered the king's presence and greeted him. The king returned the greeting and seated him at his side, saying, O my beloved Ahikar, look at these letters which the king of Egypt sent to us after he heard that thou wast slain. They have provoked us and overcome us, and many of our people have fled to Egypt for fear of the taxes Pharaoh demands. Ahikar took the letter, read it, and understood its contents. He said, Be not wroth, O my lord. I will go to Egypt and answer Pharaoh. I will show him this letter, reply concerning the taxes, and send back all who have run away. I will put thy enemies to shame with the help of the Most High God and for the happiness of thy kingdom. When the king heard this, he rejoiced greatly and showed Ahikar favor. Ahikar said, Grant me 40 days to consider this matter and prepare. The king permitted it. Ahikar returned to his dwelling and commanded the huntsmen to capture 2 young eaglets. They brought them to him. He ordered the rope weavers to make 2 cotton cables, each 2,000 cubits long. He summoned carpenters and ordered them to make 2 great boxes. He took 2 young boys and each day sacrificed lambs, feeding the eagles and the boys. He made the boys ride on the backs of the eagles, binding them firmly and tying the cables to the eagles' feet. He let them soar upward, little by little, 10 cubits at a time, until they grew accustomed to it. They rose the full length of the ropes until they reached the sky, the boys on their backs. Then he drew them down again. When Ahikar saw that his plan was fulfilled, he instructed the boys that when they were borne aloft, they should shout, "Bring us clay and stone, that we may build a castle for King Pharaoh, for we are idle." He trained them continually until they reached the highest skill. Then he went to the king and said, "O my lord, the work is finished. Arise with me, and I will show thee the wonder." The king went with Ahikar to a wide place and sent for the eagles and the boys. Ahikar tied them and let them rise into the air the full length of the ropes. The boys shouted as he had taught them. Then he drew them down and placed them safely. The king and all who were with him marveled greatly. The king kissed Ahikar between his eyes and said, "Go in peace, O pride of my kingdom. Go to Egypt and answer Pharaoh, and overcome him by the strength of the Most High God." He bade him farewell. Ahikar took his troops, his young men, and the eagles, and journeyed toward Egypt. When he arrived, the people of Egypt learned that Sennacherib had sent a man of his privy council to answer Pharaoh's questions. They carried the news to Pharaoh, who sent his counselors to bring Ahikar before him. Ahikar entered Pharaoh's presence and did obeisance as is fitting for kings. He said, "O my lord the king, Sennacherib greets thee with peace, might, and honor. He has sent me, one of his servants, to answer thy questions and fulfill thy desire. Thou hast asked for a man to build thee a castle between heaven and earth. By the help of the Most High God, by thy noble favor, and by the power of my lord the king, I will build it for thee. But as for the taxes of Egypt for 3 years, know that the stability of a kingdom is strict justice. If thou prevailest, and I cannot answer thee, then my lord the king will send thee the taxes. But if I answer thee, then thou shalt send what thou hast promised to my lord the king." When Pharaoh heard this, he wondered at the freedom and pleasantness of Ahikar's speech. Pharaoh said, "O man, what is thy name?" He answered, "Thy servant is Abikam, a little ant of the ants of King Sennacherib." Pharaoh said, "Had thy lord no one of higher dignity than thee, that he has sent me a little ant to reply to me?" Ahikar said, "O my lord the king, may God Most High grant that I fulfill what is in thy mind, for God is with the weak to confound the strong." Pharaoh commanded that a dwelling be prepared for Abikam, with food and drink and all he needed. 3 days later, Pharaoh clothed himself in purple and red and sat on his throne, with his nobles standing with bowed heads. He sent for Abikam, who did obeisance before him. Pharaoh said, "O Abikam, whom am I like, and my nobles, to whom are they like?" Ahikar said, "O my lord, thou art like the idol bell, and thy nobles are like his servants." Pharaoh said, "Go, and return tomorrow." The next day Ahikar came. Pharaoh was dressed in red, and the nobles in white. Pharaoh asked again, "Whom am I like?" Ahikar said, "Thou art like the sun, and thy servants are like its beams." Pharaoh sent him away, and commanded his court to wear pure white. On the third day Pharaoh asked again, and Ahikar said, "Thou art like the moon, and thy nobles are like the planets and stars." On the fourth day Pharaoh and his court wore garments of many colors. He asked again, and Ahikar said, "Thou art like the month of April, and thy armies are like its flowers." Pharaoh rejoiced greatly and said, "The first time thou didst compare me to Bel, the second to the sun, the third to the moon, the fourth to April. But now tell me, thy lord King Sennacherib, whom is he like?" Ahikar cried with a loud voice, "Far be it from me to speak of my lord the king while thou art seated. Rise to thy feet, that I may tell thee." Pharaoh, astonished at his boldness, rose and stood before him. Ahikar said, "My lord is the God of heaven, and his nobles are the lightnings and the thunder. When he wills, the winds blow and the rain falls. He commands the sun, and it gives no light, the moon and stars, and they circle not. He commands the tempest, and it tramples April and destroys its flowers." When Pharaoh heard this, he was perplexed and wroth, and said, "O man, and tell me the truth. Who art thou?" Ahikar said, "I am Ahikar the scribe, greatest of the privy counselors of King Sennacherib, his vizier and governor." Pharaoh said, "We heard that Ahikar was slain, yet thou art alive." Ahikar answered, "Yes, so it was. But praise be to God, who knows what is hidden. My lord the king believed the words of profligate men, but the Lord delivered me. Blessed is he who trusts in him." Pharaoh said, "Return tomorrow, and tell me a word that I have never heard from my nobles, nor from the people of my kingdom." The ruse succeeds. Ahikar answers Pharaoh's riddles, cleaned and narration ready. Ahikar went to his dwelling and wrote a letter saying, "From Sennacherib, king of Assyria, and Nineveh, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, peace be to thee, O my brother. A brother has need of his brother, and kings of each other. My request from thee is that thou lend me 900 talents of gold, for I need it for the victualling of some of the soldiers, that I may spend it upon them. After a little while, I will send it back to thee." He folded the letter and presented it the next day to Pharaoh. When Pharaoh read it, he was perplexed and said, "Truly, I have never heard such language from any man." Ahikar said, "This is a debt thou owest to my lord the king." Pharaoh accepted this and said, O Ahikar, it is men like thee who are honest in the service of kings. Blessed be God who has made thee perfect in wisdom and adorned thee with knowledge. Now there remains what we desire from thee, that thou build us a castle between heaven and earth. Ahikar said, To hear is to obey. I will build thee a castle according to thy wish. But, O my lord, prepare for us lime, stone, clay, and workmen. And I have skilled builders who will build for thee as thou desirest. The king prepared all these things. They went to a wide place, and Ahikar brought the boys and the eagles. The king, his nobles, and the whole city assembled to see what Ahikar would do. Ahikar released the eagles from their boxes, tied the young men on their backs, fastened the ropes to the eagles' feet, and let them rise into the air. They soared upward until they remained between heaven and earth. The boys shouted, Bring bricks, bring clay, that we may build the king's castle, for we stand idle. The crowd was astonished and perplexed. The king and his nobles marveled. Ahikar and his servants began to beat the workmen, shouting to the king's troops, Bring the skilled workmen what they need. Do not hinder them from their work. The king said, Thou art mad. Who can bring anything up to that distance? Ahikar said, O my lord, how shall we build a castle in the air? If my lord the king were here, he would build several castles in a single day. Pharaoh said, Go to thy dwelling and rest. We have given up building the castle. Tomorrow come to me. Ahikar returned home. The next day he appeared before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said, O Ahikar, what news is there of the horse of thy lord? For when he neighs in Assyria and Nineveh, and our mares hear his voice, they cast their young. When Ahikar heard this, he took a cat, bound her, and flogged her violently until the Egyptians heard it and told the king. Pharaoh sent for Ahikar and said, O Ahikar, why dost thou beat that dumb beast? Ahikar said, Oh, my lord, she has done an ugly deed. My lord Sennacherib gave me a fine cock with a strong voice who knew the hours of day and night. This cat rose in the night, cut off its head, and went away. For this deed I have flogged her. Pharaoh said, O Ahikar, thou art in thy dotage. Between Egypt and Nineveh are 68 parasangs. How did she go this night? Cut off the head of thy cock and return. Ahikar said, O my lord, if such a distance lies between Egypt and Nineveh, how do thy mares hear the neighing of my lord's horse and cast their young? How does the horse's voice reach Egypt? When Pharaoh heard this, he knew Ahikar had answered his question. Pharaoh said, O Ahikar, make me ropes of sea sand. Ahikar said, O my lord, order them to bring me a rope from the treasury, that I may make one like it. He went to the seashore, bored holes in the sand, took a handful of sea sand, and when the sun rose and entered the holes, he spread the sand until it hardened like woven ropes. He said, Command thy servants to take these ropes. Whenever thou desirest, I will weave thee more. Pharaoh said, O Ahikar, we have a millstone here that is broken. Sew it up for me. Ahikar looked at it and found another stone. He said, O my lord, I am a foreigner, and have no tools for sewing. Command thy shoemakers to cut holes from the stone, that I may sew the millstone. Pharaoh and all his nobles laughed. He said, Blessed be the Most High God, who gave thee wit and knowledge. When Pharaoh saw that Ahikar had overcome him and answered all his questions, he commanded them to gather 3 years' taxes and bring them to Ahikar. He stripped off his robes and put them on Ahikar and his servants and gave him the expenses of his journey. He said, Go in peace, O strength of thy lord, and pride of his counselors. Give my greetings to King Sennacherib, and say that we have sent him gifts, for kings are content with little. Ahikar kissed Pharaoh's hands and the ground before him, wishing him strength and abundance. He said, O my lord, I desire that not one of our countrymen remain in Egypt. Pharaoh sent heralds through the streets proclaiming that no man of Assyria or Nineveh should remain, but all should go with Ahikar. Ahikar departed, seeking the land of Assyria and Nineveh with treasures and great wealth. When Sennacherib heard he was coming, he went out to meet him, rejoiced greatly, embraced him, and said, Welcome home, O kinsman, my brother Ahikar, strength of my kingdom and pride of my realm. Ask what thou wilt, even if thou desirest half my kingdom. Ahikar said, O my lord the king, live forever. Show favor to Abu Samik in my stead, for my life was in the hands of God and in his. Sennacherib said, Honor be to thee, O my beloved Ahikar. I will raise Abu Samik above all my counselors. The king asked him how he had fared with Pharaoh, how he answered his questions, and how he received the taxes and gifts. Sennacherib rejoiced greatly and said, Take what thou desirest of this tribute, for it is in thy hand. Ahikar said, Let the king live forever. I desire nothing but the safety and greatness of my lord. What is wealth to me? But if thou wilt show me favor, give me Nadon, my sister's son, that I may recompense him for what he has done. Grant me his blood and hold me guiltless. Sennacherib said, Take him. I have given him to thee. Ahikar took Nadon, bound his hands with iron chains, put a heavy fetter on his feet, tied it with a tight knot, and cast him into a dark room beside the privy. He appointed Nebuchadnezzar as sentinel to give him a loaf of bread and a little water each day. The parables of Ahikar and the fate of Nadan, cleaned and narration ready. Whenever Ahikar went in or out, he scolded Nadan, his sister's son, saying, O Nadan, my boy, I have done to thee all that is good and kind, and thou hast rewarded me with what is ugly and evil, even with killing. O my son, it is said in the Proverbs, he who listens not with his ear, they will make him listen with the scruff of his neck. Nadan said, For what cause art thou wroth with me? Ahikar answered, Because I brought thee up, taught thee, honored thee, made thee great, reared thee with the best of breeding, and seated thee in my place, that thou mightest be my heir. And thou didst repay me with ruin and death. But the Lord knew I was wronged, and he saved me from the snare thou hadst set. The Lord heals the brokenhearted, and hinders the envious and the proud. O my boy, thou hast been to me like the scorpion that pierces even brass. O my boy, thou art like the gazelle that eats the roots of the madder plant, and today it eats, but tomorrow they tan its hide with the very roots it fed upon. O my boy, thou hast been like the man who saw his comrade naked in winter, and poured cold water upon him. O my boy, thou hast been like a man who threw a stone toward heaven to strike his Lord. The stone did not reach, but it became guilt and sin to him. If thou hast honored me and listened to my words, thou wouldst have been my heir and reigned over my dominions. Know, O my son, that if the tail of a dog or a pig were 10 cubits long, it would not equal the worth of a horse's tail, even if it were like silk. I thought thou wouldst be my heir, but through envy and insolence thou didst desire to kill me. Yet the Lord delivered me from thy cunning. O my son, thou hast been like a trap set upon a dunghill. A sparrow came and said, What doest thou here? The trap said, I am praying to God. The lark asked, What is that stick in thy hand? The trap said, A young oak tree on which I lean in prayer. The lark asked, What is that in thy mouth? The trap said, Bread for the hungry. The lark said, Then let me eat, for I am hungry. And when it approached, the trap sprang and seized it. And the lark said, If this is thy bread for the hungry, God accepts not thy alms nor thy prayers. O my boy, thou hast been like a lion who befriended an ass, and when the time came, the lion sprang upon the ass and devoured it. O my boy, thou hast been like a weevil in the wheat, doing no good but spoiling and gnawing it. O my boy, thou hast been like a man who sowed 10 measures of wheat, and after all his toil it yielded only 10 measures. And his master said, O lazy thing, thou hast not grown, and thou hast not shrunk. O my boy, thou hast been like the partridge caught in a net, unable to save herself, yet calling to the other partridges to cast them into the net with her. O my son, thou hast been like the dog that was cold, and went into the potter's house to warm itself. When it grew warm, it barked at them, and they beat it and drove it out. O my son, thou hast been like the pig that entered the hot bath with people of quality, and when it came out, it saw a filthy hole and went down to wallow in it. O my son, thou hast been like the goat that joined his comrades on the way to sacrifice and could not save itself. O my boy, the dog that is not fed from its hunting becomes food for flies. O my son, the hand that does not labor and plow, but is greedy and cunning, shall be cut off from its shoulder. O my son, the eye that sees no light, the ravens shall pluck it out. O my boy, thou hast been like a tree whose branches they were cutting, and it said, If something of me were not in your hands, you could not cut me. O my boy, thou art like the cat to whom they said, Leave off thieving, and we will make thee a chain of gold and feed thee with sugar and almonds. And she said, I do not forget the craft of my father and mother. O my son, thou hast been like the serpent riding on a thorn bush in the midst of a river. A wolf saw them and said, Mischief upon mischief. The serpent said, The lambs and goats and sheep thou hast eaten all thy life, wilt thou return them to their parents? The wolf said, No. The serpent said, After myself, thou art the worst of us. O my boy, I fed thee with good food, and thou didst not feed me with dry bread. I gave thee sugared water and syrup, and thou didst not give me water from the well. O my boy, I taught thee and brought thee up, and thou didst dig a hiding place for me and conceal me. O my boy, I trained thee like a tall cedar, and thou hast twisted and bent me. O my boy, I hoped thou wouldst build me a fortified castle to hide me from my enemies, but thou didst bury me in the depths of the earth. Yet the Lord took pity on me, and delivered me. O my boy, I wished thee well, and thou didst reward me with evil. Now I would tear out thine eyes, make thee food for dogs, cut out thy tongue, and take off thy head with the sword to recompense thee for thy abominable deeds. When Nadan heard this, he said, O my uncle, deal with me according to thy knowledge. Forgive me my sins, for who has sinned like me, or who forgives like thee? Accept me, O my uncle. I will serve in thy house, groom thy horses, sweep the dung of thy cattle, and feed thy sheep. I am the wicked, and thou art the righteous. Ahikar said, O my boy, thou art like the fruitless tree beside the water. Its master wished to cut it down, and it said, Remove me to another place, and if I bear no fruit, then cut me down. The master said, Thou beside the water hast borne no fruit, how shalt thou bear fruit elsewhere? Oh, my boy, the old age of the eagle is better than the youth of the crow. Oh, my boy, they said to the wolf, Keep away from the sheep, lest their dust harm thee. The wolf said, The dregs of the sheep's milk are good for my eyes. Oh, my boy, they sent the wolf to school to learn letters. They said, Say A, B. He said, Lamb and goat in my belly. Oh, my boy, they set the ass at the table, and he fell and rolled in the dust. One said, Let him roll, it is his nature. Oh, my boy, the saying is true. If thou begettest a boy, call him thy son. If thou rear a boy, call him thy slave. O my boy, he who does good shall meet with good. He who does evil shall meet with evil. For the Lord requites a man according to his work. What more shall I say? The Lord knows what is hidden, and will judge between me and thee, and will recompense thee according to thy desert. When Nadan heard this speech, he swelled up immediately like a blown bladder. His limbs swelled, his legs and feet and sides, and he was torn, and his belly burst, and his entrails were scattered. He perished and died. His end was destruction. For he who digs a pit for his brother shall fall into it, and he who sets traps shall be caught in them. This is what happened, and what we found concerning the tale of Ahikar. Praise be to God forever. Amen and peace. This chronicle is finished with the help of God. Exalted be he. Amen, amen, amen.